Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the second of two Budget Committee of the Whole meetings for the operating budget on Tuesday, February the 14th. I'm Mayor David West. I'm chairing today's meeting. Regional Local Councillor DePaulo, who is joining us on screen, is not able to be with us in the chamber today. So, but we do, I think, have a full council. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think we're missing one, Councillor Tree, but he should be here momentarily. So without further ado, the first item on the agenda is for the adoption of the agenda. Councillor Liu, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries unanimously. And second item is disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. Okay, seeing none, Mr. Clerk. So we have, moving on to delegations, we have two delegations today, one of which is here in the chamber with us, and the other, I believe, is with us online. So if we could have our first delegation, Howard Doty, regarding the municipal election campaign contribution rebate program. Okay, we'll start maybe with Wilhelm Blake. We'll wait for a little bit longer to see if Howard can join us. So Wilhelm, welcome. You're welcome.
See you again.
Well, thank you.
I was wondering this morning what was in the box. And then I decided it was a chain of office.
There you go.
You had a box.
That's right. Yeah, I was actually at...
This will be the topic of today. Yes. And I'm looking happily at the roses.
There you go.
Coat of arms. It's a special pleasure on this day, Valentine's Day, to declare that I'm not only in love after 50 years, I'm rolling my eyes, with my wife, but also after 37 years with Richmond Hill. And my activity is based on that this municipality gave my family, who was migrating all over the world, family history, I'm not going into it, a home. And we love our home, and this is more than our enjoyable house. I love this community, and I make lots of friends in this community. Even some are sitting on the bench ahead of me. I'm not identifying them. Conflict of interest, maybe. I like to speak out for the reinstallment of the town's bulletin in the Liberal, which was cancelled some 3 years ago. And I have 3 arguments. The first argument, Simon Joy, you gave me this morning, I got an email from you saying we have an initiative for age-friendly policy. This is age-friendly policy. In my generation, and I have to correct some of you, I don't look like it, but I am actually older than somebody with total white hair. Just to give you a hint, my birth certificate, my German birth certificate has still a swastika on it. Now do your counting. And I'm happily using my computer to do research for my books and use it as a typewriter, and also email. But certain things I struggle with, including getting a COVID shot. And I have to turn to a neighbor to the west to help me with this. Anyway, I question a little bit the polling mentioned in the staff report that the elderly, supposedly all over 75, prefer to do communication with the city on digital. And I wanted to ask to you, Mr. Mayor, can the staff tell me whether they did this survey through internet, through phone calls, or through mailing, which has a big impact on the result? Yes. Is there somebody who could answer me this? It's a big argument in the staff report. Everybody in town wants it. on digital, and let's forget about these people who are about to at the end of their life. Can I ask this to you?
Well, go ahead with your presentation, Mr. Blake. I think one of us can maybe ask that during that, but
Okay.
now's the time for you to tell us
Okay.
what you think.
First argument, this was age sensitive, and I do think it still needs a written, printed thing in the Liberal. Second argument, the staff report doesn't talk about the motives. Well, it talks about, but it's too narrow, why this was cancelled 3 years ago. It wasn't just cancelled because of the digital revolution. It was cancelled because the then time majority of the council was annoyed at the critical reporting of the Liberal at the time. Now, I could go into journalists have to be critical, but nevertheless, is this already 4 minutes? Okay. Okay.
You still got 1 minute.
Okay. I just think about this motive and take into consideration both. Third, the staff report looks at communication only as a business advertising their services. This is important. The city is a service provider, but it's not the only thing. The city is also an entity, is, as our wise deceased mayor said, is a community. And it's not just figures. Therefore, it's based on values, material and immaterial values. And to sum it up, the bulletin in the Liberal is part of the importance of symbols for our city. It starts with our coat of arms. It continues with the chain of the mayor. Jokingly, I could say, was he on the way of bringing it to the pawn house to balance the budget? No. Yeah. And it continues. Therefore, I strongly suggest that we put it back into the Liberal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, I think we are now, Mr. Doherty, you're here and ready for your presentation? Okay, come on up. Thank you for joining us live and in person and in 3 dimensions.
Doing my best. Let's just say that I can compete with the previous speaker
No problem.
for age and perhaps exceed him in infirmities. In any event, I'm here to speak about the contribution rebate program. The expressed aim of the contribution rebate program is to attract good candidates for elected office who might otherwise be deterred because of the substantial costs of running an election campaign, and also to incentivize residents, especially with low and medium incomes, to make financial contributions to candidates. The combined result is said to be the democratic enhancement of the elections by lessening the advantage of wealthy candidates or candidates with wealthy backers from disproportionately prevailing in electoral contests and promoting active participation by the residents. These are laudable goals. Unlike the federal tax break, however, for contributions to political parties that was canceled by Prime Minister Harper, maybe because it was too effective, this plan is, to my knowledge, supported by no empirical evidence that it does, in fact, enhance the quality of political candidates or even significantly lower, even the playing field. What we do know is that several nearby municipalities have introduced the measure, but by the staff report before you, the costs as well as the benefits of those programs as they existed into a 2022 election may not be known for some time. In the meantime, all we can say is that the estimated cost of hiring a full-time administrator to implement the rebate, monitor its use, and administer the distribution of funds will cost the city about $300,000 to take the program through to the election of 2026. This additional full-time staff member, of course, will not be wholly committed to the task of coordinating the rebate. It's hard to estimate, but it seems likely that the rebate administration will take no more than 1/3 of the allotted time, thus making the successful candidate open for the job available, open for work in other policy and planning projects during the time when there is literally nothing to do with the rebate scheme itself. Under normal times, when the city is merely stretched for cash, as opposed to suffering under the consequences of the recent provincial government actions related to the development fee decrease, the various sorts of forced austerity due to the loss of about $90 million in development charges, $4 million in community benefits, and over $240 million in parkland dedication, it seems less than prudent to jump on this particular unproven bandwagon, which some critics might call a method of increasing senior staff under the guise of democratic renewal. A better method of enhancing democratic inequity of reducing democratic inequity might be to limit the financial contributions of vested interests from huge developers to hardscrabble low tow truck drivers to political campaigns outside the more tightly regulated campaign period, and to regulate more stringently the misuse of councillors' legitimate communications budgets when they are deployed for blatant self-promotion and re-election advertising that is outside, technically, the narrow election campaign. I hate to use the word philosophical, but I think it fits. On a philosophical note, what this rebate program seems to do is to legitimize what I'll call a transactional theory of government. That is, it tries to put people in the position of saying, if I give so many dollars, I can expect such and such a return. Whether that is for wealthier donors, things like contracts with the municipality, or perhaps easier treatment when a project is being proposed. But it undermines the real purpose of campaigning for someone you believe in. And simply to make it a tit for tat with a refund seems to undermine to me the real purpose of political participation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the input. Thank you to you both for being here in person too. Okay, onto our scheduled business. We have our first item of business is our draft operating budget deferred from February the 7th. Now, do we have some presentations going on before that? We get to that? Okay, so do we go right into this then, and the presentations will be, okay. So I think our first presentation then on that is with Kelvin Kwan, Commissioner of Planning and Infrastructure, on his 2023 draft Planning and Infrastructure Department operating budget. So over to you, Commissioner Kwan.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the Budget Committee. It gives me great pleasure to be before you this afternoon to present the draft 2023 draft operating budget for the Planning and Infrastructure Department. However, before I get into my formal presentation, I want to start by thanking the Treasurer, Gigi Lee, and her team for the exceptional and hard work they have put into this draft operating budget and the recently approved capital budget. Thank you, Gigi. I also want to thank and acknowledge my team for their exemplary work, and I will take a moment to introduce the senior leadership of the Planning and Infrastructure Department in alphabetical order. So if the team could wave or nod as I introduce you. Maria Flores, Director of Policy, Gus Galenis, Director of Development Planning, Nick Kalavis, Director of Facility Management, Nadeem Khan, Director of Building Services and the Chief Building Official, Bob Levesque, Director of Infrastructure Delivery, Paolo Macero, Executive Director of Infrastructure and Engineering Services, and Dan Tushevsky, Director of Infrastructure Planning and Development Engineering. Thank you, guys. Next slide, please. So now we're into the who, what, and how. I'll start off by a slogan I've developed. We plan it, we design it, we build it, we maintain it. These are the high-level core responsibilities of the Planning and Infrastructure Department. We are comprised of two major business units, Planning and Building Services and Infrastructure and Engineering Services. The Planning and Building Services side of the house is responsible for the planning, policy development, implementation, and ongoing monitoring of the physical and land use future of the city. Planning is regulated primarily in accordance with the Planning Act, and the resultant new construction and other building improvements are regulated through building permits under the Building Code Act. The infrastructure and engineering side of the house focuses on long-term strategic planning, programming, and delivery of the city's infrastructure and subsequent maintenance, repairs, and replacement of these assets. Collectively, we work together to achieve consistent outcomes that align with the strategic plan, official plan, and asset management plan. Next slide, please. In terms of the 2022 accomplishments, I won't read them all, but I will highlight the essence of these accomplishments over the past year. Continuous improvement of our processes and systems using the lean approach. The rollout of our EnerGov program, which is the development tracking database. Greater accountability on the city to provide regular reports to the province on critical issues such as asbestos remediation and building construction. And then, of course, continual updating of all our policies, procedures, and standards. Next slide, please. Many of the city's physical assets, roads, sewers, parks, recreation centers, were built 20 to 30 years ago and at our stage in their life cycle, which demands significant repair and replacement, such as roofs and HVAC systems, just like your own homes. As we transition into the digital age, considerable work is required to transfer historical paper records and the modernization of regulatory processes, all of which allows greater access to public information, better use of data to monitor the performance of city assets, and ultimately greater efficiencies in our service delivery. Next slide, please. Going forward into 2023 and beyond, PID, like other departments, is also subject to budget challenges. As a customer service delivery department, many of our costs are directly affected by those factors which we all see and hear about daily. Increased labor costs, inflation, supply chain issues, and skilled labor shortages. In addition, many initiatives of the provincial government, such as Bills 109 and 23, force us to further adjust our processes to meet new societal issues and expectations. However, I will note that the full impacts to the city continue to be assessed in regards to Bills 109 and 23, as the operating details through regulations have not been published yet by the province. However, as such, this draft operating budget does not account for any impacts at this time of those bills, and further reports will be coming forward to council in the future. Next slide, please. As can be seen in this financial summary, the two major costs in PID are personnel and materials. Again, as a frontline customer service department, and given the nature of our core responsibilities as regulators, The majority of our staff are certified professionals, such as planners, engineers, architects, ecologists, and designers. It is imperative to provide market competitive compensation for these sought after skills, which over the last several years, unfortunately, are in short supply. However, we are also fortunate that many of the costs for our mandatory processes are also covered by user fees for these services. With respect to materials, these increased costs mainly reflect the cost of building maintenance and repair of city assets. Of note, I am presenting a forecasted total expenditure of $39 million with revenues of almost $15 million for a net operating cost of $24 million, which represents a net increase of 5.3%. Or expressing all of these numbers just a little differently, I note that 98% of this draft operating budget falls into those two main categories, staffing at 69% and materials and supplies at 29%. Next slide, please. In looking at the divisional overview, COVID has certainly had an impact on some of our business units, particularly development planning and facility management. There was a slight downturn in development activity, resulting in a revenue decline of about $600,000. As well, there's an increase in the facility management budget of almost $439,000, which is due mainly to the catch-up necessary from the previous year's budget limitations. Next slide, please. I've already touched on the two of the main drivers affecting the increase in operating costs. However, in order to continue with the pace of activity in the various business units, I am recommending 5 additional full-time staff, 4 of which are self-funded and 1 which is tax supported and has a half-year impact of about $82,000. Of these 5 positions, 4 are new and 1 is a contract conversion. All of these positions are important to our operations as the complexity of development and systems monitoring and maintenance has increased. I also note that the staff request for the project manager in the lifecycle planning area flows directly from the recent approval of the capital budget. These additional staff will also help the city to manage risk within our own facilities and assets, pivot to address new initiatives and legislation as it comes forward, and builds in resiliency to maintain the service levels in times of staff vacancies, vacations, or other unforeseen circumstances. However, in the absence of approving these and future positions, I am concerned about the welfare of existing staff, the integrity of our programs, our ability to maintain customer service levels, and that our overall ability to deliver our core responsibilities may be compromised. Next slide, please. Throughout our efforts to modernize processes, systems, and service improvements, we have, however, been able to realize some savings through cost avoidance, automation of mechanical systems, use of provincial grants, increased tree compensation, and enhancing user pay options. I am also expecting that the implementation of the development service review recommendations, which Council will see later on, will assist in further efficiencies and customer service improvements. Next slide, please. As we move forward into 2023, I'm expecting that we will continue our journey towards improved customer service and enhancing the customer service experience during their interactions with the city. Our work programs will continue to modernize our databases and provide greater information and access thereto. Some of our key program initiatives include completion and council adoption of additional chapters of the official plan update and the significant studies which support the OP, such as the Transportation Master Plan and the Urban Master Environmental Servicing Plan. That's a mouthful. And with respect to city-owned assets, enhancements to our enterprise asset management system, as well as ensuring that facility improvements are done consistent with our energy conservation and demand management plan. So next slide, please. So in summary, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, I will finish with another saying. If it's on the ground, above the ground, or below the ground, the Planning and Infrastructure Department has a major role and influence on how the city will look and feel for many generations to come. Our mantra is to achieve sustainable city building, walkable and complete communities utilizing design excellence. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This concludes my presentation, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. So I think if be consistent with what we did in the first meeting, if there are any questions for Commissioner Kwan specifically, we can do that now, and then we'll move on. We've got, keeping in mind, we have 3 more presentations, but if there's anything that's fresh on your mind about this particular presentation, we could ask that now. Okay, local and regional councillor DiPaolo, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to ask Commissioner, you're expecting over $400,000 in reduced revenue, and now that it's probably not Bill 23 related because those reduced revenues are going to come in future years. Can you just briefly explain to us why the expected reduction in revenue overall?
Commissioner?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the reduction in development applications is the cause of our reduction in development revenue overall. As council is probably aware, there are many ebbs and flows in the development application process, depending upon the year. But, based on the averaging and forecasting that we've done, I hopefully presented a very balanced and meaningful representation of the expected and forecasted revenues for the years to come. And
okay.
Sorry, with respect to Bill 23, that is a separate issue in terms of what the impacts will be going forward. Of course, under Bill 109 and 23, there are compensation clauses which are being offered. An applicant, should the municipality fail to approve applications within a timely manner, but these details are being worked through not only with our municipal partners, but the industry under Bill.
Okay.
Councillor?
So your projections are showing an expected further decline versus last year? Is that?
That's correct.
Is that what I'm hearing? Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Shui.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Through Mr. Chair to our city staff here. So I do have questions here on the page 8. Can you bring city, Mr. Clark? Can you bring to the slide 8? My first question regarding to this $80,000. That's pricing for a new hired project manager. For the remaining 1, 2, 3, 4 new resources, we charge at 4.3. Is that how much money we charge for this? Another 4. Oh, it's total 5 positions, only charge $82,000.
Through Mr. Chair, to clarify, yes, I'm requesting 5 new positions, 4 of which are self-funded, meaning that they are funded through reserves that are dedicated to those projects.
Okay, for the new increasements, actually it's only 82. Rest of them coming from our capital.
That's correct. There's only 1 tax-supported position.
Okay. Thank you so much. Second question regarding to the full-time based personnel increase. I see the 3.3% is around $778,000. Can I know and head count of your department for now?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the current head count in PID is 176.
Spare me for a second. Let me do a math. I want to see what's the average salary increasement from this department, because this $7,000 a lot. Sorry, apologize. Sorry, how many employees here?
We have 176 persons in the commission.
It's around $4,500 per each individual. So, okay, I got it. Thanks.
Councillor Davidson.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. And through you, Mr. Mayor, excuse me, are we Are we ready for things? I know Bill 23 is going to include things like you can build a granny flat, you can build, I think we're going to see more granny flats. We're going to see more basement apartments. We're going to see more builds on existing properties as per the act. Are we, I believe those applications are starting now. Are we in a position to maintain inspections and all the other parts that are our responsibility as a municipality? Are any of these new positions considering those, or are those further down the road things that we may have to hire? Because I can't imagine we have the complement of staff to accommodate some of the changes we may see with Bill 23.
Through Mr. Mayor, the city has already implemented a zoning bylaw to allow multiple units on one property. As we go forward, I believe we've approved 106 such applications since 21. Two of the new positions are in the building services division, which will help to address the growth of the city as we move forward. But all of the current staff through the existing building permits would be responsible for ongoing inspections of those new apartments or basement apartments or other dwelling units.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Is 106 an increase? Are you sensing we're going to have an increase, and will existing staff be able to keep up with some of these changes that are meant to allow others, people to put as additional units on their property? I'm not talking about big buildings. I'm talking about additional units like you just mentioned. Is 106 a lot? And if growth keeps going, are we in a position with enough staff to do things like inspections and all the other things that municipal government does?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly we will continue to monitor the uptake, and as necessary, we will request additional staff. But I would just remind council that the addition of additional staff within the building services division are completely self-funded through the building reserve. So there's always a net zero impact to the city.
Thank you.
Councillor Shu.
Thanks, Mayor, and the presentation. My first question is, do we have a brief breakdown of human resources allocation on different projects? Like how many staff get involved into development planning, how many staff get involved in the policy plannings, like that, etc.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I have the information available, but is there some specific detail which we're looking for?
Can you be more specific, Councillor?
I just want to know more about the breakdown of each division, how many personal costs we are spending on development planning and policy planning, something like that. I just want a more detailed personnel costs in your department.
All right, through you, Mr. Chair, I can give a detailed breakdown in each division if you wish. In the Commissioner's office, there are 2 personnel. In the Development Planning Division, there are 24, Policy Planning 23, Building Services 34, Infrastructure Admin, there's 1, Infrastructure Delivery 35, Facility Management 25, and Infrastructure Planning and Development Engineering 32, for a total of 176 personnel.
Thank you. My second question is referring to the slide, page number 8. Just want to clarify one thing. Development planning revenues reduction. Does that mean the revenue from the development charges?
No, through you, Mr. Chair. No, these are development planning applications seeking approvals for either an official plan amendment application, zoning bylaw, plan of subdivision, site plan. These are the normal things that come before this council for approval through public hearings and other regular meetings of council.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, anybody else for the Commissioner? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much, Commissioner Kwan. The next person up is Sherry Adams, Commissioner of Corporate and Financial Services, on the 2023 draft corporate and financial services operating budget. Hello, Ms. Adams.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and the members of the Budget Committee. I'm here today to present the Corporate and Financial Services Draft 2023 Operating Budget to you today. Before I start, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Gigi Lee and her team for all of their support, guidance, really hard work, and advice throughout this process. I would also like to take this opportunity to introduce the CFS directors. Rob Jones, our Director of Information Technology and our Chief Information Officer. Kathy Tracy, Director of Human Resources. Libby Hood, Acting Manager of Strategic Communications. And two others who you guys all know very well. Stephen Hike, Director of Legislative Services and City Clerk. And Gigi Lee, our Director of Financial Services and Treasurer. Next slide, please. So who are we? Corporate and Financial Services includes the following business units. The Office of the Clerk, which includes Access Richmond Hill, Mayor and Council offices, corporate supplies and elections. It also includes information technology, human resources, financial services, and strategic communications. The core responsibilities of the CFS team are foundational to the city's operations. The city's CFS department is largely a support services area and is responsible for providing direction, policy advice, and leadership to and through the 5 divisions that I talked about. Next slide, please. There are many accomplishments that were achieved by the CFS team in 2022, and we are only capturing a very few of those here today. And I'll just touch on them briefly. The Office of the City Clerk was incredibly busy. They administered the 2022 mayoral by-election, including post-by-election tasks, Ward 4 vacancy, and the 2022 municipal elections. And again, I'm just touching on all of these briefly. In information technology, they completed the enterprise resource planning system implementation and completed 24 digitization program requests to further enable online payment digitization of forms and requests across a variety of service areas. Human Resources launched a new performance management process and tool, more in line with leading human resources practices, and they successfully implemented a new emerging leader program. Financial Services, the council adoption of the community benefits charge strategy and bylaw, and also the phase 1 of the AMI data collectors were installed, enabling remote reading functionality and the development of remote water meter readings. Strategic Communications, they won 3 international marketing awards for the Young Street placemaking banners, Find Yourself campaign play video, and the mayoral by-election videos. They drove over 1.3 million users to richmondhill.ca, a 50% increase over 2019. Next slide, please. In CFS, full-time expenses represent 87% of the total 2023 budget requests. This is base budget increases are related to the general cost of living, grade step and benefit rate adjustments, and 6 new staffing requests. IT non-personnel is demand driven, and the software increases reflect capital programs approved in previous years. We do generate some revenue in financial services, and that is dependent on customer payment patterns and the real estate market. I do want to highlight some other pressures, which include inflationary pressures on contracts and materials, supply chain disruption, and the tight labor market. The tight labor market has become evident when we have gone out to market to recruit staff. We have had a number of instances where our offers have been accepted, and just before the individual is to start, they receive a better offer from another organization, and our offer is declined. With more opportunities in the market, we are starting to lose good staff to what they see as better opportunities. With having a tougher time attracting new staff, and by losing existing staff, it is adding more work and pressure to our current employees. Pressures are also driven by legislative and regulatory considerations, such as OMERS for part-time staff and Bills 23 and 109. Next slide, please. There's an increase to the CFS budget of 4.9%, which equates to approximately $1.2 million. I will go into further detail as to what makes up the increase in the following slides. This slide shows how the budget is split across the divisions. I will highlight the IT budget, which is due to staff and software. Upgrades to software is required to ensure the city can continue to function and to deliver on previously approved council programs. Next slide, please. There is a 4.2% increase to full-time personnel for COLA, grade, step, and benefits increases, and this includes the 6 new staffing requests. With financial services and human resources, the staff requests get us back to pre-COVID staffing levels. Over this period, CFS also assumed responsibility for most of the library support functions, as well as delivering on a number of new programs and initiatives. Of the 6 staff requests from CFS, 2 are fully funded, 1 from capital and 1 from the Water Quality Protection Reserve Fund. I'm going to briefly outline the need for each of the staff requests. The communications supervisor. This division supports all areas of the organization, focusing on increasing awareness and engagement with residents, maintaining trust and confidence, showcasing work and accomplishments, and managing the city's brand and reputation as a great place to live, work, and invest. A senior level communications resource is always available, including outside work hours on weekends and holidays, to help respond to any events or emergencies that may occur. And this is in addition to their responsibilities during the work week. This level of service is not sustainable given the current structure of the division and poses challenges for wellness and balance. And demand for communications advice and support has grown over the past few years. The IT business analyst. There's been an increased demand for IT business analysts again over the past 5 years. This role in particular will provide operational support to the city's planning and engineering teams, and it will support other systems and programs as well. I'd like to point out that the city has gone from far behind technologically to modern in a short period of time. This has resulted in significant growth in complexity, risk, security, and service capability. Failing to fund this role will leave a gap in the business knowledge of the systems, as the majority of the team we currently have are IT consultants that are going to be departing this coming summer. This will directly impact our ability to respond and implement to system changes that may be required, such as with Bill C-23. The payroll specialist role is required to support the library, which was an added responsibility to the city payroll team. In addition, payroll took on full cycle payroll function, and this role was previously done by an external vendor, including preparing records of employment, regulatory remittance, T4 filing, and other requirements. This position will be responsible for payroll system changes, updates, which includes changes due to collective agreement updates and yearly regulatory updates from the CRA. And it will be required to perform testing, advise on system functionality, and approve every function update and data change. I'm almost done. Human Resources Associate. This position will be responsible for data entry, administrative support to human resources and the health and safety committees, filing and document management, budget monitoring, research support, and other duties. This role will free the HR professional staff to launch a psychological health and safety program. Having a program like this is being recognized as a key priority as it leads to efficiencies in staff output, as well as in engagement, attraction, and retention. And that is key in this current labor market. Surveys that we have conducted have shown our staff are stressed, burnt out, and looking for psychological health and safety supports. Over the last number of years, the province has made amendments to the Occupational Health and Safety Act and the Workplace Safety Insurance Act, putting more of a focus on the accountability and responsibility for employers as it relates to psychological health and safety. The Procurement Management Advisor. This position is fully funded from the Capital Fund. The Richmond Hill Centralized Procurement Section supports internal divisions, including library, external suppliers, and ultimately the residents of Richmond Hill through the acquisition and delivery of goods and services in accordance with the city's policies that adheres to both domestic and international trade agreements. In 2022, 350 plus projects were awarded with the support of the procurement section. The Senior Analyst Stormwater position is fully funded from the Water Quality Protection Reserve Fund. This position will analyze large amounts of data from various databases, and interpret computerized aerial map information to confirm property area and rate type. The stormwater rate structure will continue to evolve and be refined. This position will become the staff expert on stormwater-related billing matters. On the IT budget requests, the city manages software within IT. More than 50% of the increase is related to approved capital projects now live. For example, the city's permitting and licensing software, facility management software, and stormwater modeling software. The remainder is base inflationary pressures when renewing existing contracts. IT does try to secure price stability with multi-year agreements, but renewals currently reflect unprecedented inflationary pressures across the board. Changes to the way we work and digitization of the city also leads to additional licensing costs. For example, Microsoft Teams, digital markup software for planning and engineering staff, Office 365, hybrid communication tools, to name a few. And we do all this while keeping everything secure. Most of the CFS budget is expense and demand driven. We don't really generate any revenue. Next slide, please. On this slide, you will see that the revenue that we do generate is in financial services from user fees and from IT, which we get mainly from savings and renewals. Last slide, please. Again, there are many priorities in CFS for 2023, and they're there. You can take a read through them. And I'm going to steal from Calvin Kwan. In conclusion, when you think about CFS, we are responsible for the money, the people, the technology, the information, and legislative services. And those are all fundamental to the city's operations. Thank you. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you so much. That's a great presentation. Lots of details there for sure. Do we have questions of council for our commissioner? Councillor.
Thank you. Excuse me, through you, Mr. Mayor. The corporate communication addition position. The last council, if I recall, gave council big budgets or bigger budgets or budgets of their own to do their own communication. Did that not at all relieve the communication department for the municipality as a whole? Because it feels like now we're paying for two totally separate communication budgets, one for councillors, one for the corporation. And I'm just wondering, do they not collide at some point? And is there some way to cut back on what we're spending on communication?
Okay. Through this chair, through you, Councillor Davidson, the communications department for the city actually does communications on behalf of all of council and not individual council members. So when individual council members want to go out and communicate with their residents, that's done with your communications. And then again, we communicate on behalf of all of council and anything to do with the city.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. But didn't those budgets exist before the boost in budgets for each individual councillor? Weren't they always doing that? I'm just wondering, taxpayers are now funding a much larger budget for individual councillors like myself to be able to communicate. One would think that, and allegedly, one would think that if I'm using my budget, I'm telling the public about the things that the great city of Richmond Hill is doing. Did that not at all lighten the load or reduce the need for funding? For the communication department, or is there a way for us to reevaluate, shift, and figure out the communication budget serves everybody efficiently and effectively?
Commissioner.
Through the chair to you, Councillor Davidson. Honestly, I wasn't here back then, so I couldn't answer that question. I would say, though, that communication has become more complex with the different ways in which we communicate. And I would also say that, you know, previously, again, I don't know what was there, but having one senior person to be on call all the time was more manageable than it has become, because it's just become a lot more complex.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Okay, so regional local councillor, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Chan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you so much, Commissioner, for your presentation and the ongoing support, even including the IT structure. Now I'm talking to you that people can hear. If you can turn to slide number 7. Okay. There's a number of positions, and my colleague, Councillor Davidson, asked one. I just want to get a bit more information to make sure that I did hear properly. On the position of payroll specialist, I believe that I also hear that is also a situation whereby a number of IT staff may be retiring. I don't know if there's a relationship to it. Am I here right? Through Mr. Chair.
Through this chair to Councillor Chan, I don't believe that's correct. This is really because of taking on the library as well as bringing payroll in-house that used to be done by a third party.
Okay, got you. So it's taking on additional, I guess, job volume, you may say, from transfer from library. So presumably that may be a corresponding reduction of library. We'll see. Okay, so it's not a one-time situation that you require or request for that position. I just want to be clear. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your response.
Okay, Councillor Hsu and then Councillor Tree.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks for the presentation. As we all know, we are still under the impact of COVID-19, and I think most staff are working in a hybrid mode now. And the city office has to provide additional resources and also IT devices for the staff to work from home. Does it mean we have to provide more resources and spend more on this in the long run?
Through the chair to Councillor Hsu, no, actually, I mean, we put in the IT technology when COVID was here to be able to communicate with staff. No additional resources were required.
That means just moving the existing resources and IT devices from office to home.
Yeah,
Is it?
Exactly.
Okay, thanks. Referring to the presentation, full-time personnel expenses represent 87% of the budget this year, and we have 4.2% increase this coming year. Do you have the exact numbers of the staff in terms of full-time, casual, contract? Do you have exact numbers?
I don't have the exact numbers with me, right? Do you have them, Gigi? Oh. Thank you. Thank you for the question, Councillor Hsu, and through the chair. And the Office of the Commissioner, we have 2. Office of the Clerk, 15. Access Richmond Hill, 15. Mayor and Council offices, 20. Information Technology, 54. Financial Services, 44. Human Resources, 15. And Strategic Communications, 10.
Thank you. Have you done any study or research if we can outsource part of the jobs or services or staff job outsourcing instead of hiring a full-time staff?
We haven't looked at outsourcing specifically. However, we have looked at, could we in some cases bring in contract staff to help us out? And I can tell you with the current labor market, if you try to get contract staff, it is impossible to find anybody. I think Commissioner Kwan made the point that we're looking for very skilled, very specialized people out in the marketplace, and they're all in high demand. So for us to hire them, we need to be able to be competitive from a salary point of view, and the fact that we can offer them full-time employment versus a short-term contract.
Thank you. That's all about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Tree.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And through Mr. Chair to our city staff, I have a similar question as Councillor True regarding to the slides. Can you please print slide 6, I think 7, regarding to the chart, previous chart? My questions here is, what is the head count regarding to the overall finance and corporate department?
I just went through them. So the one in financial services is 44.
Total is 24, right? If you look at the chart here, we have around $1 million just for the full-time based personnel. If I divide it by 24, that's a huge number, right? So how many people in here in our department? We charge on 1 million here is much more than the planning department. plan department had around 120 something, and we are budgeting for $700,000. Here we have around $1 million. Just curiosity, how many employees here in your department?
175.
Okay, similar, around $5,300 is just average salary increasement plus benefits. Okay, I got it. Thanks.
Okay, is there anybody else? I wanted to just make a couple of points and maybe some clarification. So this department has a very high percentage of personnel budget, but it's unlike some of the other departments where you have a lot of material costs. This is a service delivery department. So of course your department would be very high percentage because it's people that deliver the services and support to the other. And there's not a large amount of bricks and mortar and steel beams and, that type of thing that you're also have in the budget. So you're really, it is the way it is. The other thing, we've been talking a little bit on and off here about outsourcing, but and you'd mentioned it's an interesting point about the availability of contract staff, but outsourcing has some downfalls the way I understand it. I mean, they're not employees, so you don't have quite as much control over the quality of the work that gets done. You have to manage that contract. And the other thing about outsourcing is it's not less expensive, because if you outsource, the person that owns the company that's outsourcing has got to make a profit. So, I mean, I think we have to be careful about that, because, we can outsource all kinds of things, but it isn't going to make the cost overall. It'll make our personnel costs go down, but it won't make our overall cost to the municipality go down. The work still has to be done.
And Mr. Mayor, you're absolutely right. And I can tell you, when you outsource, because they're competing in the market for that same level of talent. And then on top of that, we're paying all of the administrative costs to them. So it actually can be quite a bit more expensive. And then the other thing with regard to your previous question, yes, we are heavy staff. And again, as the other departments get bigger and more complex in projects, we need to be able to support them on that as well.
So we outsource when it's a temporary thing. We don't want to have the employee forever, only for a temporary project. Or if it's a specialized item that we just don't have that knowledge in-house, so we outsource it, because that company specializes in that very narrow particular area.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Okay. Is there anybody else? Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question just pop up on my mind. It's not directly related to the budget, but I'm just curious, seeing all these big companies being attacked, a cyber attack. Are we budget for cyber attack if anything happened?
Absolutely, we do. And I can say our IT department is on top of it. And it's something that they're very aware of. And we recognize that it's becoming an increasing risk. Absolutely.
Thank you. Wonderful.
That's actually a really timely question. Yeah. I mean, this is a problem for municipalities across Ontario and Canada. All right. Is there anybody else for the commissioner? Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And last person with two different presentations is Gigi Lee, Director of Financial Services and Treasurer, on the 2023 draft corporate accounts budget. And then after that, Gigi will do the draft water, wastewater, and stormwater budget. As we've heard, Gigi has been a very busy person in the last little while, and our thanks go to her as well.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of the Budget Committee. I'm here today to present to you first the 2023 draft operating budget for the corporate accounts. Next slide, please. Corporate accounts are revenues and expenses that are corporate-wide in nature rather than department-specific. As a result, the treasurer provides oversight of these accounts. The key areas include investment income, taxation, insurance premiums, corporate transfers to and from reserves and reserve funds, as well as corporate grants. The net revenues from the corporate accounts generally provide significant offsets to the city's total operating expenditures. Next slide, please. Accomplishments in this section in 2022 are shown on the slide. The year-to-date investment portfolio return at September 30th was 2.16%, obviously benefiting from a more favorable investment environment. And the Bank of Canada increased rates significantly in 2022, going into 2023. For context, the total 2021 return was 2.45%. The annual investment portfolio results are typically reported in June, along with other year-end reports. There were a total of 1,176 property tax assistance grants issued to seniors, an increase from the 2 years prior. An online application process was also introduced in 2022. Happy to share that roughly 50% of the applications were actually done online in 2022. The property assessment growth is 1.61%, resulting from the post-peak pandemic catch-up in the industry, as well as impact. That translates to additional taxation revenue for us in 2023 into subsequent years. Next slide, please. Like other departments, the corporate accounts also face budget pressures and considerations and are highlighted on this slide. The personnel contingency budget is depending on upcoming collective bargaining negotiations. A very good news story for this budget is that we're able to leverage the higher interest rates and establish an investment income strategy. Investment income is highly dependent on the economic environment, as we know, and the changes in the Bank of Canada's overnight interest rates. Penalties and interest revenues continue to represent a significant revenue source for the city. However, that's contingent on the residents' and businesses' financial situations and payment patterns. The corporate budget includes transfers from water, wastewater, as well as stormwater fund. We make adjustments on an annual basis year over year to ensure alignment with the staffing resources and efforts. Last but not least, the 2023 draft operating budget utilizes the remaining funding from the COVID-19 recovery grant to offset some of the related pressures. As the funding is exhausted, any residual pressures will translate to future tax rate impacts. Next slide, please. This slide highlights the expenditures in the corporate accounts. The overall increase is 13.5%, as you can see at the bottom of the slide, and it's actually offset by the revenues on the next slide. Next slide, please. With the favorable changes in revenues, the corporate accounts provide an overall net budget of almost $2.7 million. As I mentioned earlier, that goes towards offsetting the pressures within the organization. Next slide, please. This table summarizes the corporate accounts by section, including the expenditures, revenues, the BIA, corporate grants, as well as taxation. The overall net budget is $5.7 million to offset the budget pressures in the other areas. And the details are on the next slide. Next slide, please. The departmental budget for the corporate accounts highlights the detailed changes in this budget. As I mentioned earlier, at the very top, we're looking at the Safe Restart Agreement or the COVID-19 grant funding of $2.5 million that we've used in this budget. Also looking at property taxation and assessment growth of 1.6%. That translates to approximately $1.9 million in budget revenues for the budget. With respect to the investment income, as I noted earlier, we are seeing significantly higher investment income as a result of the interest rate increases. So we've established an investment income strategy that I'll talk to a little bit further down in the slide presentation. What we've done is we've included a factor in the operating budget so that we're taking advantage and leveraging the increase in investment income. Overall penalties and interest revenues on late tax payments, we've increased by $400,000 based on our trending. For personnel gapping vacancy, personnel gapping, it's actually related to savings from temporarily unfilled vacancies due to attrition, promotion, turnover, unpaid leaves, etc. So based on our experience, we are factoring an increase of $309,000 to represent the historical trend. And then we also have insurance premiums that I talked to a little bit earlier. And then also the personnel contingency as well as the increase in the senior tax grants. So overall, there's a bottom line net favorable impact to the budget. Next slide, please. For a number of years, we have been phasing in the investment income reduction to recognize the low interest rate environment. In 2022 and 2023, we're experiencing the complete opposite. With rising interest rates, the city has increased the investment income to the anticipated level and established an investment income strategy. Leveraging the higher interest rates, we have increased the budget in the operating budget, as well as a transfer to the tax rate stabilization reserve to set aside funds to offset future tax rate impacts. Next slide, please. Overall priority for the corporate accounts in 2023 is a strategy for financial sustainability, aligning and right-sizing expenditures and revenues, and right-sizing the transfers between all the various funds. Mr. Mayor, that concludes my first presentation.
Okay, thank you so much, Treasurer Lee. And we have Regional Local Councillor Chan. Go ahead. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Director Lee, for the presentation. This is one part of the whole jigsaw puzzle, corporate accounts, right? Last week, I raised the issue about gapping in personnel. So I'm pleased that you do have that gapping information in terms of dollars and cents in both slide 6 and slide 8. So through Mr. Chair, we have directly report our slide 8 again. I just want to be absolutely clear. So the $309.3 thousand, if I remember correctly, yeah, right on. So that's already factored in the budget that has been presented today. So looks like it is. I just want to get a confirmation for you, Mr. Chair.
Through the chair to Deputy Mayor Chen, that's correct. So we factored in an increase in gapping to recognize the trend, and that gapping pertains to existing staff resources.
So, which meaning that anything within a bracket, meaning is actually plus, meaning not money spending out, money saved or money coming in. Okay, thank you. So that seems to be quite substantial, 309.3, because otherwise the tax will even be higher. Would it not be a correct interpretation through you, Mr. Chair? I saw the nodding, but I think for the record. Correct. Okay, thank you. So it does help. And 309, I would say probably comes to about 1.25%, roughly around that. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Councillor Tree.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through Mr. Chair to our Treasurer, I have two questions. The first one regarding to the personnel urgent or personnel emergency, that's around $8,000. Do you have more information regarding to that expense?
Through the chair, Councillor Tree, I think you're referring to the personnel contingency.
Yeah, that's right. Because before 2023, we have nothing in there, but in 2023, we reserve around $800,000 here.
There are actually two slides that speak to it. We can go to slide 8. So the $831,500, Councillor, is a personnel contingency budget related to upcoming collective bargaining negotiations. So it's a budget that we set aside.
So it's a prediction, right? Just in case future we have bargains, we do have pocket money inside our own, right?
Through the chair. So it's included as a budget and a contingency for upcoming collective bargaining negotiations in 2023.
Okay, I'm not so familiar with this term, so.
Okay,
I can't remember.
that maybe if I may, when budget negotiations happen with one of our unions, we don't know where we'll settle. But we take a guess and we put an amount in case like when we settle the contract, it'll either be a bit more, a bit less, but we don't know where until we settle. And we know we have negotiations coming up, but we can't predict exactly where they'll be. So this amount of money is to cover any additional funds needed when we settle those contracts. Is that correct, Ms. Lee?
That's correct. So it's a factor that we put in.
Right.
So,
It's an estimate.
okay, perfect. I think I had quite two questions regarding to the salary increase and the benefits, etc. So those agreements or salary increase like a 3% or 4% is really coming from this bargaining resort, or it's coming from our department itself. For example, based on the inflation, my department trying to increase 3% of salary, or this is going to go through the bargaining process. We negotiate with all the parties, we agree that there's going to be 3 points, something like that.
Through the mayor to Councillor Tree, the department's budgets represent the cost of living adjustments. So the annual cost of living adjustments are factored into the departmental budgets. When it comes to upcoming negotiations and collective bargaining with respect to, let's say, QP, fire, and all the other ones, we include that contingency factor for that potential increase in the corporate budget, which is this one.
So we do have a negotiation process with all the unions, firefighters, etc., right? Those way
Yes.
we agree to either increase 3% salary or 2% salary, etc.
Through the collective bargaining process.
Got it. Next question is, I see another number which is not on your slide, but is on our portal. We do have a big savings here. There are around $1.5 billion transferred to the reserve. Let me read this one clearly. So transfer to the infrastructure reserve funds, that's $1.5 billion. Do you have more information regarding to this item? Because it's huge, right? It's not listed on your slide, but they do show up on the portal. So the name of this transfer is transfer to infrastructure reserves funds.
If we can go to slide number 5. So the transfer to the infrastructure as well as the cash to capital reserve funds are listed. So essentially, this represents the increase that we're transferring to the reserve with respect to state of good repair capital. So it's the 1% CAS levy that we talk about. So this is related to providing additional funding to the tax supported reserve funds to support state of good repair capital.
Is this same thing? Okay, we know we have a capital budget meeting around a few weeks ago. Is it the same amount of money or same account? Because as I remember, we do have more money over there to budgetings for our bigger project. Do we really necessary to transfer another 1.5 to that capital budgeting? I'm just saying, if they're same count or totally separate.
Through the mayor, absolutely yes. So we have a capital budget that's funded by reserve funds. This is the money that goes into the reserve funds so that we can draw the funding to complete those capital projects.
So gentlemen, I'm just through the question here. Since I think we already have a $300 million in our reserves just for capital. Is this item we can just stop putting to our reserve for this year? I'm just through this question to the committee member here. Thanks.
Through the chair, my recommendation would be no. We do have reserves and reserve funds, and they're all dedicated and they have different purposes. We talked about the state of good repair capital program over the next 10 years. Again, it'll go back to the graph showing the 10-year forecast and the spending over the next 10 years. This funding goes towards providing for the capital program. Like 2023 budget was $28 million on tax supported capital. So this money goes into those reserve funds to provide for existing infrastructure that requires repair and replacement.
Okay, thank you so much for your information.
Okay, thank you. I don't have anybody else. Do I? No. Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Lee. And so you're back again for an encore performance here for the draft water, wastewater, and stormwater budget.
Thank you again. Next slide. So the who, what, and how. The city, in collaboration with York Region, provides water, wastewater, and stormwater services to residents and businesses in Richmond Hill. The delivery of the program is shared between all three departments: planning and infrastructure, corporate and financial services, as well as community services. Water refers to the drinking water. York Region acquires water from the City of Toronto and Peel Region and sells it to Richmond Hill. The city then distributes the water to properties within the boundaries of Richmond Hill. Wastewater is collected from individual properties by the city and then directed to York Region sanitary sewer mains. Stormwater is water from rain, snowmelt that flows over land or impervious surfaces. The region charges the city a wholesale rate, and the city passes on these costs at a combined retail rate to our residents and businesses. Next slide, please. Taking a look at the 2022 accomplishments, mostly technology related: improving business function utilizing the EnerGov software, enhancing work order functionality in Maximo, expanded the AMI or advanced metering infrastructure locations from 5 to 17 to improve remote meter reading capability. We also established an air valve inventory and initiated a preventative maintenance program, continued replacement of the ICI water meters, and transitioned the stormwater management fee from a flat rate structure to a multi-tiered rate structure based on property characteristics. Next slide, please. The budget pressures in this area are listed. Aging infrastructure will require funding for stated good repair. Climate change will result in more severe weather events that impact city infrastructure. The York Region charges the city a wholesale rate increase of 3.3%, and similar increases are in the forecast, as well as projected water volumes that are slightly lower than 2022. Higher transfers to the operating fund to reflect increased efforts and activities toward water and wastewater functions. Like other departments, there are personnel-related pressures in this budget as well. We're also transitioning from traditional manual water meter reading to remote reading. Next slide, please. The table shown highlights the water and wastewater budget by budget category. What's important to know is that this has a net zero impact and it's a net zero budget. What that means is the budget is self-sufficient and funded through the water rate. Any surpluses or deficits flow through the reserve funds. Next slide, please. The table on this slide shows the detailed budget highlights of the expenses. As mentioned earlier, the biggest expense driver is the wholesale rate increase charged by the region. The increase of 3.3% coupled with changes in volume results in approximately $1.8 million impact. Transfers to the reserve and reserve fund is the net amount available to allocate after factoring all water and wastewater related revenues and expenditures. So as a result, you see an increase here. The bottom line expense impact is almost $3.6 million. Next slide, please. On the revenue side, we increased the revenues, passing on the 3.3% increase in the combined retail rate. The increase in revenue offsets the wholesale rate increase and charges from the region. The remaining revenues offset other expenses, and the residual, as I mentioned on the previous slide, is transferred to the reserve or reserve fund. So the 3.6 million here offsets the 3.6 that you saw on the earlier slide for a net zero impact. Next slide, please. Highlighting the efficiencies and savings, just like all the other departments, in the draft budget for water and wastewater. Additional revenues were identified based on trend and volumes. What we've also noted here and incorporated into the budget is savings based on historical trends. So that's for the meter reading service, as well as contracts that are within the section. Excuse me. Last but not least, also a savings in insurance premiums based on the premiums that we have for 2023. Next slide, please. The table shown here highlights the stormwater management budget by budget category. Similar to the water and wastewater budget, this budget also operates as a net zero. What that means again is that the budget is intended to be self-sufficient and funded through the stormwater management rate. Next slide, please. The biggest driver on the expense side is a reduction in transfer to the Water Quality Protection Reserve Fund, which is the net amount available to be allocated after factoring stormwater-related revenues and expenditures. I'll speak to it more on the next slide. Next slide, please. The 2023 draft operating budget reflects an overall change in revenues of almost $1.6 million. The 2023 budget of revenues reflect a 2022 forecast for actual revenues that we're billing, and also based on an improved data set based on the full reconciliation of property tax and stormwater accounts that we did in 2022. Conservation lands as well as golf courses have been, their rates have been recategorized. Also, what we did in 2022 through the reconciliation is we've removed lands that are conveyed to city for parks and municipal roads. Also, what you see as part of this number and the change is that we are in 2023 now factoring the 12-month impact of capping certain eligible properties by their land area as approved by council in 2022. As noted on the slide, the rates for 2023 remain the same as 2022 with no increase. In 2022, council approved capping the land areas, and that will continue into 2023. Next slide, please. Overall, the priorities for 2023 are listed on the slide. Mr. Chair, that concludes my presentation. Next slide.
Thank you so much. Okay, any questions on this? Councillor Tree.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Through Mr. Chair, to our treasurer as well. My first question regarding to the percentage of this increase. I see some places around 3% for the watering charges. Is that going to be go to the regional or go to our city? For our city perspective, how much we charge? From regional perspective, how much region charge?
So the region is increasing their wholesale rate for 2023 by 3.3%. And in turn, we're passing on that same increase to the retail rate, which is also 3.3%. So the region charges the wholesale rate to us. We provide the service to the residents and businesses at the retail rate, and that is also 3.3% increase in 2023.
From city perspective, we did not charge anything additional, right? Just coming from region and we passed down.
Yep, we're passing along the rate.
Got it.
Okay, anybody else on water, wastewater, stormwater? What, we don't want to talk about stormwater anymore? Okay. All right, so then moving on. Thank you very much, Ms. Lee. So we've got, at this point in time, I'd like to go to Budget Chair Joe DiPaolo. And before I do that, I'm as I mentioned at the beginning of this meeting, I am standing in for Councillor DiPaolo, but I appreciate the work that you've done Councillor DiPaolo on the budget and shepherding this through as the chair of this committee. So given that you're not chairing at the moment, I can go to you and you can move, get us started on the motion. You're on mute. Oh, you're still on mute, Councillor.
Thank you.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you, Mr. Marin. Thank you very much for filling in as chair. While I'm working remotely, there is an advantage that I'm able as chair to move motions in the way we're working here. And I do want to move the motions to receive this operating budget and in item A that we receive it, and then in item B that the following staff recommendations be deferred to this meeting, and that those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items are all moved according to it's for approval as shown here for adoption at February 22nd council meeting. Now, yes. So on 4.1, receive for information, and I just want to make sure we're proceeding properly. Yeah, I'm going to move all the staff recommendations in item 4.1, and before I do so, I really want to thank our financial staff here under the leadership of Gigi Lee for all the work that they've done. It's been a very, very challenging year, Mr. Mayor. As most people know, we're dealing with inflation rates that we haven't experienced in over a generation, and that impact has been felt. It's been felt by all municipalities, and we're no different here in Richmond Hill, but I think we've absorbed it very well, and I think it's a testament of our past financial practices and our prudence in maintaining our reserve funds, our resiliency to put money aside for a rainy day. And Mr. Mayor, I believe this year it's raining. It really is. I think this is the time where we are going to to benefit from our sustainability exercises, and I think even the proposed budget increase rate right now that we're at is relative to all other municipalities. Very good. We're in a very good position, and no one likes tax increases, and my preference would be to not raise taxes, but I do believe at this time and this juncture it would be irresponsible for us to freeze the tax rate. We would only be shifting costs onto future years. There's you can't get away from or around increasing costs. I think our staff's done an excellent job in mitigating against those costs. I think we as council still have a lot to discuss as to how we can get that tax rate impacted down a little bit. But for now, I'm going to move these staff recommendations with thanks to all the presenters today, and to everyone who worked so hard on bringing this budget document forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Budget Chair DiPaolo. So I will just for everybody to know. So the recommendation is now on the floor. So I know that there are some things that I think we may be able to do here to tweak the recommendation through amendments and so on. So I'd like to entertain those at this point. We had a lot of discussion in the last meeting and in the intervening week. We are now at a point where we're at a point where we could pass this and then move this to the February council meeting. So if there's amendments that we can consider, let's do that now and have that discussion, and then we'll finish off hopefully by passing version of this particular motion that we have before us. So the first speaker I have is Councillor Chan, and then I'll go to Councillor Thompson. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And first, I'd like to echo the speaker before me. Thank you to all staff, because I know Director Lee is taking all the glory and compliments now, but I know behind her, everybody in the department and the city actually had been working on this on a year-long process, as I understand it. Mr. Chair, at this point, I do want to make an amendment. I know that the B1A is what we have in front of us, which is meaning that Mr. Kirk, would you mind if we return that page and stop the clock maybe? Thank you. So the B1 is what I'm referring to, because what I'm going to say would have ramification in terms of the actual number, budget increase in dollars and cents that we, and relating to a tax levy. And in the end, that would have, I hope, more movement towards a lower tax rate increase or adjustment than last year. Based on what it's here, correct me I'm wrong, and this is including the municipal election campaign contribution rebate.
No, it's not.
It's
So
not. Okay.
That's a good question, though. If you could just stop the clock for a second. Sorry, Deputy Mayor.
Don't be sorry.
So in the agenda before us, we've got the municipal elections campaign rebate program coming up. We have the reinstatement of the community bulletin board coming up, and then your member motion will be last. So
Fair
we
enough.
will be dealing with those
Correct.
separately.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we do have the other items. Then we can make a decision collectively at the time as a committee. So I'd like to make the amendment that to have all the tax-funded staffing requests be deferred for at least 3 months. I do understand not all new ask in terms of staff position are supported by the tax rate. Some are, as indicated in previous presentations, are based on some reserve funds. And perhaps if Director Lee might not have the actual dollars of all this. But this is my amendment, including all the new staffing requests that is funded by the tax rate be deferred for at least 3 months. And my hope is that it would net a savings in terms of, I would hope that with probably at least hopefully $200,000 or more. And if that's the case, then it's probably close to 0.2% of the tax rate in terms of the number. And if I remember correctly, there's also an item previously talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chair, about the opt-out of the snow rental program. And I would like to add in my amendment, in addition to the deferral, also remove that opt-out program, snow rental program. I believe last time I recall is over $100,000 at a cost to the city. So based on my simple math, I estimate as about $1,000 for the deferral of those positions for 3 months, another $100,000 for the removal of the opt-out program as no rental. So that's about $300,000 as an estimate, is subject to verification. And now, Mr. Kirk, I would look for you to help, but I know that would change the content on B1. Your Worship, this is my amendment at this time. Thank you.
Okay, so can we break that up into an A and B? I presume that's what you wanted? No, I'm asking you, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, yes, it's two component.
Okay,
One is the deferral, the tax funded staffing request for at least 3 months. The second part is remove the opt-out program of snow windstorm that costing the city probably around $100,000.
okay,
And honestly, one is deferral of tax funded staffing requests for a minimum of 3 months. And the second one is that remove the opt-out program of the snow windstorm. Well, opt-out of snow windstorm program. And it's subject to the staff coming back with the precise dollars that would have ramification in terms of the adjustment of numbers of B1 assistants.
okay. While the clerk is doing that, Ms. Lee, did you have something to say?
To the chair, I think the deputy mayor had a question on the number of staff that are being deferred.
No, but do we know, this is the one, this is like 5 positions, Deputy Mayor, right? Yeah, the tax.
I
tax
just want to
funding.
confirm the
Only the
tax
tax
rate.
funded
Okay.
position.
So out of the 15 positions, 9 of them will actually be impacted.
Right,
those
but
are
it's only the
tax-
5 that we're talking
The
about.
tax funded, correct.
Okay.
Yes,
And you're going to defer those till October the 1st is what you're proposing.
at least 3 months, yes. Right.
Well, it was supposed to be, they were supposed to start in July and 3 months is October.
That's correct. So they're in the draft budget, they're to start July 1st. So postponing the start date for those 9 tax funded positions will mean they start October 1st.
No, not 9, 5 tax funded positions.
So the intent is to take a pause.
There's 9, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry, my apology. Okay, so all 9.
Yep, that reflects what I have in mind. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Director Lee.
Okay, so we have a amendment on the floor. So I will entertain speakers to the amendment. We don't need a seconder. This is committee of the whole. So, okay, Councillor Davidson, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Is one of those deferred positions the requested position at the library that we heard about last week?
Through the chair, no.
Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Through you, the mayor, I would like to thank, both regional councillors, for their comments. I certainly echo a lot of the similar feelings that they've expressed. I know that, a lot of people have had concerns about personnel expenditures and that's natural. It's understandable, when it's one of the highest, it is the highest number that you'll see throughout, not just our municipality, but all the rest in the region, except for Aurora. They had contracted services came in actually higher than the rest of them. So, it's understandable that a lot of questions came out about those. And I did review a study that was done by the Fraser Institute over a 10-year period. And, those that was very revealing because it did help me in a lot of ways, particularly with this budget, in that, I could see that despite those heavy numbers in personnel expenditures, when you looked at us and how we compared to our neighbors, we actually fared somewhere in the middle, some places a little bit better. If you just looked at it in terms of the cost per person throughout each municipality, I think there was only 2 municipalities that came in less than us. And, from there, if you looked at it in terms of percentages, we were all very close in the middle. And then there was a couple that were below and some above. But to come back to the motion that, the amended motion that has been brought forward by Mr. Chan, I do have, by Councillor Chan, I do have a question about the impact of those particular positions. Were we actually ready to go for July 1st, or, how much of an impact was this?
Through the mayor to Councillor Thompson. So staff had recommended a staff date of July 1st to reflect the anticipated budget impact, but also more importantly, to address the service levels that we talked about at this meeting as well as last week's meeting. Definitely there is impact in deferring the start date of these positions to October because of staff capacity constraints. Like we talked about that earlier in the presentations, we talked about the same last week. So by deferring them, although we are going to see a budget reduction, we are looking at the expense of staff and additional pressures, as well as, like I mentioned, the capacity constraints that we talked about. We're burning out staff, and the later we defer it, the more impact it will have on our existing staff.
Understood. Okay, and the opt-out program for the snow removal, I understand we've been putting away funding for that. Have we ever had anybody actually take advantage of that program?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So this year we had 10 properties request opting out. Last year there were only 5.
And how exactly, through you, Mr. Mayor, how exactly does that opt-out program work? We must provide that information to our staff, and they just automatically don't go to those things, or do we flag? What exactly do we do?
For you, Mr. Chair. So we have end of driveway flags. They're light posts, and when someone calls us to apply, tell us that they want to opt out, those are installed at the end of their driveway so that their property is no longer part of the windrow program. The plows will skip over it.
And it sounded like my time is up, but just one last question. So the funding, what will actually be the funding if we remove that, or what will be the impact if we remove that funding?
Mr. Chair. So based on the uptake of the program, we actually believe we can continue the opt-out option. It's only if we get a substantial number of people to opt out that it becomes a bigger financial problem for us, because we need a way to move the snow away from some of those properties, particularly in instance where there's double driveways connected. You can't just opt out one and not the other. But so far, the past 2 years, what we anticipated and the reason for the original budget request hasn't happened. So we think we will be okay without it now.
Okay, thank you very much. Those are my questions.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Silovitz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to, before I get to a couple of things, I just want to thank our staff for all the work that they put into both budgets, capital and operating. All the presenters from the heads of each department, thank you for this today and last week. Thank you very much. Without your explanations, it's very difficult to actually understand the nuances. And with that thought, I'd like to get to Councillor Deputy Mayor Chan's 2 amendments. So first of all, I would ask that when the vote is called, those are separated, 1 and 2. And I think I'd also ask that we have recorded votes because this becomes very complicated after a while. So that helps us and residents and staff keep a good count on that. So with regards to Deputy Mayor Chan's amendment number 1, that all tax rate funded staff requests be deferred for a minimum of 3 months. I can't support that. I don't believe that it is the prudent way to go. While I understand all the concerns that have been voiced at this bench, and through emails and social media, I believe that our staff have shown us through their presentations the necessity to have these 9 positions filled. And if they are not filled, we're just basically moving it down the road. We're moving the goalpost. So ultimately, it's going to have to be decided. And I understand that we are working in a in a very difficult financial situation nationwide. It's not just this municipality. But I don't believe that the ask for the staffing numbers in this particular budget is in any way frivolous. And I absolutely agree with what has been said by Treasurer Lee, that we're talking about service levels. And if we do not, if we deny the asks for those extra staff members, I do believe that it would not be in the best interest of the corporation, nor for our residents with regards to service levels. So I know how difficult this is. It's a very difficult conversation. But in my opinion, I'm good with 2, absolutely, but not with 1. With all respect to Deputy Mayor Chan, I don't believe that we should be doing that right now. We are also living in an era where we had 3 years of no tax increases, and as a result, these staff asks pile up, and this is exactly where we are. And if we start denying it for any further length of time, it's going to pile up and it's going to get even greater. So my time's up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Tree.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Chair. Through Ms. Chair, I'm not sure this question to city staff or to our Deputy Mayor. All the tax rate funded stuff. So regarding to the capital funded stuff, I know we have capital funded stuff. They are not show up as a dollar signs in here. Is that going to be a permanent or contract? For example, a project or capital lasts for 5 years. Those stuff will be drawn for 5 years. If we are short of the budget or capitals, are those employees still belong to a full-time employees of a city or going to be contract or something?
Through the mayor to Councillor Tree, the positions being requested are full-time staff. So in your example of capital funded, a capital project may end, but then we also have hundreds of other capital projects. So that cycle continues. So we have staff that are dedicated, funded by capital to manage those capital projects.
Yeah, if capital is gone, for example, maybe Bill 2023 impact us. Say 5 years later, we use up all the capitals. We have $0 in our pocket. How about those capital funded new hired employee? Are they still belong to city? We still paying for salary, benefits, etc.
Through the chair to Councillor Tree, even with the impact of Bill 23, we still have other capital projects that are required. We have a number of state of good repair projects. Bill 23 impacts the growth-related funding, but will continue to be a growing municipality that will need to spend on both state of good repair as well as growth projects.
So basically, in other words, they are full-time.
They're needed. They're needed.
Okay.
FTEs, yes.
Okay. The second question regarding to LC's comment here, as I mentioned before, during different occasions, So if you look at industrial, the matter is really the finance department, the finance industrial or IT industrials. You look at the worldwide, lots of big companies start to lay off people, right? So I know government normally don't lay off people, and if compared with other organizations, they are lay off people, and here in city we are talking about salary increasement. And in the meantime, we're going to increase the FTEs in our city. From personal perspective, I know a lot of my friends, they lose their job. So my background is IT. So I know how Amazon, how Google, and how Microsoft lay off tons of IT resources, right? So I just threw this question here. I know it's a really tough season through COVID-19. Everybody tired because a lot of workload on existing employee. Is this really the right time for government to hire more resources? I look at other people's, they're losing their job. Okay, that's my comment. Thanks.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Through the chair, a lot of the private sector are actually, they are laying off people, and especially in technology. A lot of those organizations actually grew very quickly before they knew how to monetize the business that they were in. And so now they're being forced to lay off. As well, we also have legislated services that we have to continue to produce regardless of what's going on.
Okay, anybody else on this? Okay, Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank staff, all staff for your great work, and also thanks Councillor Chen, Deputy Mayor, for taking initiative to trying to bring down the tax rate. This is never easy, and I think council and also the public needs to know what the impact is going to be. How much money are we saving with these two amendments? Not just we vote on this one and then we pass it to February 22nd. So in the appropriate time, I would like to move in referral back to staff to report back on the impact on these two amendments, so that we can make a prudent decision on February 22nd. So, but I will let everybody speaks before I move the referral to be fair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Ms. Lee, do we know, we would know this right now, right?
Mr. Mayor, I do have that information available right now. So to Councillor Liu, the first amendment related to deferring the tax rates, tax supported staff, the 9 tax supported staff by 3 months will have an approximate impact of $205,000 in 2023. So it's a budgeted saving if we defer the start date. So it's 205,000.
In terms of Mr. Mayor, in terms of percentage?
About 0.17%. So just under 2%. And then with respect to the snow windrow opt-out program, it's 0.1% or $126,000.
So through Mr. Mayor, so we deduct 0.17 and 0.1 from 3.84. Am I correct, Mr. Mayor? Which is what?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu.
3.57?
57.
So what is the impact to a regular household? I remember in the report, 3.84 equals to $70 increase per year, just $75, sorry, for a Richmond Hill household. So minus this 0.27.
What we need is a big thermometer.
So the $75 becomes roughly $70. So it's about a $5 difference if we do that.
Okay, thank you. Also through you, Mr. Mayor, that 9 new staffing requests, does it has anything to do with the library?
Through the chair, no.
Okay. Thank you. So no referral needed.
No, I don't. It's
Okay,
up to you, of
Fine,
course.
that's
but
fine.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else on a first round? Councillor Shu.
Thanks, Mayor. And first of all, I'm much appreciate that Deputy Mayor Chen raised this motion to amend some details. And the council and the city work together to squeeze more savings and do something for our neighbors. The first point is there will be 9 position tax fund position will be deferred to hiring a new. Do you know what positions they are? Just want to make sure that the existing level of services doesn't have any huge impact on this.
Through the mayor to Councillor Shu, I can list them out. The 9 positions are the communication supervisor, the IT business analyst, the payroll specialist, the HR associate, the policy researcher in community services. We also have a CSR conversion, as well as an arborist, a roads technician, and a project manager. The last 2 are in the planning and infrastructure facility section.
Thank you. The second one is to remove the opt-out of the windrow snow removal program. I just thinking, can we have any plan for long term if we can outsource the snow windrow removal for long term? At least we have to do something to do a research or a study to compare if it's done by our city or done by the private contractor. Do we have any plan to compare for the long-term costs for these services?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we don't have a long-term plan to compare. Council made the decision a few years ago to go with an in-house option. So at the present time, we have all of the machinery to do the program ourselves, and we've hired all of the staff to do it. So that there would be a lot involved in assessing that.
Can I, Councillor Shu, this is actually a really good question. And I have this sneaking suspicion that we're going to be talking about this more, but strictly speaking in this meeting, we're talking about the budget more so than we're talking about future plans. But I allowed the question because I think it's, we are going to talk about it, but it's just not maybe right now.
Yeah, I know. Just thinking if it's appropriate time to ask this, but just while thinking.
It's an excellent question though.
Thank you.
So
that's all about. Thanks.
Okay. Is there anybody else on this? I'd like to make a couple of comments, if I may. Regional Local Councillor DePaula.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to address these couple amendments that have been proposed. Removing the opt-out for the window snow removal program, I definitely support that. Having over 100,000 in contingency in case there's an overwhelming request to opt out. The whole notion seemed kind of silly in the beginning. I mean, we wouldn't, if people chose not to get mail from the city, we wouldn't go to all this expense to eliminate 5 or 10 people in the city that don't, it's just a cost, and it's an across the board service that we have to administer across the board, and we can't absorb a cost. If we save some money for skipping houses, that would be fine. But I 100% support the removal of the opt-out window snow removal program, but I can't support the other amendment, the other option. We have to remember that staff going to a July 1st date is already a concession on staff, and they pushed it as far as possible to try to save some tax rate impact already. We have an environment where it's all about retaining good people, and that's private sector, public sector, across the board. Human resources are becoming more one of the most important things for any organization, and we have to have an environment here that people are choosing to work here, that we're able to attract the qualified staff that we need to deliver excellent service. And I can't support that, but Mr. Mayor, I would be willing to support any number of other changes that could reduce the tax rate impact, including extending the snow window phase in, extending the firefighter phase in, administrative ways in which we can push dollars forward. There's 3.08% impact changes that can be made to add up to 0.24% lower tax rate. All three of which I would support before I would support this hiring deferral, and as well, even reducing some of the contribution to our mill rate stabilization fund, because we're not drawing from mill rate stabilization, which one could make an argument that this is the year to draw from mill rate stabilization, but just reducing the amount we're contributing. There's $1.5 million that we're further contribution to mill rate stabilization, and if that was reduced to reduce the tax rate impact in this year, I would support that before a deferral of these tax rate funded staff requests. So there's 4 ways we can get this budget down by about 0.3% without doing that. So I can't support number 1, but Roman numeral 2 I will support.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, I'd just like to just a couple of things. First of all, the windrow, to start at the beginning, I think we are at a place now in this budget where I think we have a good budget. The 3.84, I mean, I realize that people don't want to be spending the extra. I certainly don't either. But I think, I've spent a lot of time with staff, and I know Budget Chair DiPaolo has also done the same. And I believe that we're at a place now that strikes a good balance. However, having said that, with regard to the amendment in front of us, the windrow opt-out to me is a no-brainer. I mean, that didn't make any sense to me when it passed. I didn't support it at the time. I don't support it now. That's an easy way to save $126,000, even though it doesn't make much of a difference on the actual individual tax bill, but it's just, we don't need to pay that. So let's not. The staffing request, though, I understand why we would be moving this forward, and it is tempting because it's $200,000. That's quite a bit of money. But what I'm really concerned about is that the staff that we intended to hire in July would then not be hired until October. And I believe that time is also valuable. And if we can get this staff hired and working and delivering the services and doing the things that we need to do, that will be a benefit to our community. And as we just talked about, the actual savings to the individual taxpayer is so small. I believe that the increase in service and the number of things that those 9 per people can do in our organization will outweigh the very, very, very small savings that it represents. And the other thing is, too, we have to keep in mind, I mean, we're really just deferring this until next year. I mean, anybody that we hire is a cost going forward. But as I said, a number of times in these discussions, we are served by people. I mean, the snowplows are the things you see on that snowy night, but it's the people driving it that are actually making the snowplow go. So, we want services, we deserve services, and we need to get good services, but we need enough staff contingent to be able to do it. So I won't be in favor of that. But the Windrow opt-out, I do think is a good idea. I think that there are a couple of other things that we could be doing after this amendment is dealt with that might also save a bit. I think at the end of the day, though, we're trying to be as efficient as we can here, and we're exploring all the details, and we're having discussions, which so far I think have been very good about what we can do and what is best for our community. So I think we need to continue to do that. But on this particular issue, I can support the Windrow part, but I don't think that the other one is enough of a benefit. And I think the cost of delaying it is not as good as the benefit that we would be getting. Although I'm really glad that we're talking about it. I think we need to be debating things like this. So, okay, Councillor Chan, you can remind me, Mr. Ban, we have one speaking round on an amendment, right? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Now to clarify. First of all, I thank my colleagues for all your comments. These are healthy discussion. That's why we have democracy here. Let me be clear. Any operation like ours, we could be lean, but not mean. And certainly it's not my intent to be mean at all. In fact, this is not a denial of no hiring. This is actually taking a pause. Take a look at what the situation in both this economy and the job market. I believe the commissioner also talking about that early on from CFS, it's really tough out there in terms of recruiting. I don't have a figure, and I don't think anyone can say, even though the intent may be really budget for somebody to start up in July, can it really be realized in the current market? I don't know, but it's a question mark. So my intent here is under B1 is take a pause. It's not a denial of that request for those positions. In fact, the city is actively recruiting. Probationary firefighters are now being advertised to recruit new firefighters. The city is actively recruiting. And so I for one, I do not see this as a denial of requests. Rather, I think it's not unreasonable. Take a pause, looking at the situation of the economy and also the job market situation. In fact, given a little bit of time, I would tend to think, if I remember correctly, one position is the project manager for life cycle. Potentially, there might be opportunity depending on the federal budget, on the provincial budget. There might be opportunities to get some grant money to support this position. Because if I understand correctly, this has to do with asset management, things of that nature. There may be potential if we just be taking a bit of time for that. So that's what I'm going to say. But at the end of the day, this is from my end, I honestly don't see it's unreasonable. It's not a denial. In fact, by pausing, it might actually have benefits at the same time as to whether the capacity understand, but in terms of the real reduction of level of services, I remain my position to see how it's going to impact. Because honestly, this is not the first time any organization has been doing this kind of thing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we have an amendment. We've got a recorded vote requested, and we've asked to have it separated. So over to you, Mr. Ban.
Thank you, Mayor Rose. But before we take the vote, if I can just clear up a little bit on the amendments, just for some certainty, to Regional Local Councillor Chan, that the tax-funded staff request be deferred with a start date of October 1st, as well as just cleaning up to remove the opt-out option for the Windrow Store program. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. So voting on Roman numeral 1, that all tax rate funded staff requests be deferred for a minimum 3 months with a start date October 1st, 2023. Councillor Silvitz.
No.
Councillor Tree,
Yes.
Mayor West,
No.
Councillor Shu,
No.
Councillor Liu, Councillor Thompson,
No.
Regional and Local Councillor Chan,
Yes.
Councillor Davidson,
No.
Regional and Local Councillor DePaula.
No.
That motion fails to carry. Voting on Roman numeral 2, remove the opt-out option for the Windrow Snow Removal Program. Councillor Silibet.
Yes.
Regional and Local Councillor DePaula.
Yes.
Councillor Liu. Councillor Tree.
Yes.
Regional and Local Councillor Chan.
Yes.
Councillor Thompson.
Yes.
Councillor Shu.
Yes.
Councillor Davidson.
Yes.
Mayor West.
Yes.
That carries unanimously.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so we're back to the main motion as amended. Is there any other option or any other amendments, Councillor Davidson?
Sorry, I don't have.
Actually, you know what? My apologies. I actually had Councillor Thompson as the next speaker. Did you still want to speak now that we've done what we did?
I would like to just through you, the mayor, I would like to thank staff for putting the presentation together. The oodles of information that they've helped us along with throughout this whole process. Again, I just want to echo the kudos that other colleagues have already mentioned. And yes, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else? Councillor Tree, Councillor Tree.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Through Mr. Chair, I think maybe our chair as well, Joe DiPaolo or you. I have two questions. First one, for today's meetings, for this budgetings, have we passed this budgeting today or we have following meetings to discuss?
Okay, so again, from a procedural point of view, Mr. Ban, if I say anything, stop me. If I say anything incorrect, stop me. What I believe will likely happen here is that this is committee of the whole. So we will pass, hopefully, all of the things that are pass or fail, all of the things that we have on the agenda today. What happens then is if they pass, they will go to the council meeting on February the 22nd. And at that time, it'll be on the agenda as a council meeting agenda item on that date. And then there is still the opportunity at that date to make changes, but we're recommending to council whatever we pass today. So that's the way that works. And Mr. Ban is nodding, which means I've done a good job. I feel so proud. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Also, my second question here is regarding to those 6 items here. Because it's so complex, we do have a lot of different items here. So my suggestion is maybe for next meeting, or we have separate private meetings. Can we choose the items one by one and we agree upon each of them? If there's discussions or specific item we need extract for discussion, I think that's purpose is for the meeting. If everyone agree with certain items, we save our time.
I think Mr. Clerk, did you want
to? Through the mayor to Councillor Tree, certainly any item could be separated for its own vote as requested by council.
Yeah, I think maybe this good approach will save us a lot of efforts. If everyone agree with a certain one, we just pass, right? If someone has different, we can extract items specifically discuss.
Okay, I think I understand, but just to be clear, so today we're dealing with items by amendment to make a recommendation. So it's this group making a recommendation to itself, but we're ourselves at council. So at council, whatever we decide to do at council becomes official. Okay, is that's right? You understand that?
Okay, got it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Davidson.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you so much to everyone who's brought me up to speed and the rest of council. I do worry about, we're going to do 3 point whatever it ends up being. And then next year, the forecast is 5.78, after year 4.9. So I can sleep for the next year. Is there always these, like, I feel like the lower rate this year is based on the forecast of what we're going to have to do in the next 3 years. Is there always a vigorous effort throughout the year to figure out ways to either not make it go up almost 6% next year? I'm just worried that we're kicking the can down the road and there's going to be some pretty big increases in the next couple of years to make it work. Can you just tell me that folks, the people like you are constantly looking for efficient ways, and that we're going to spend the next year trying maybe not to make it so high next year and the next 3 years, which overall was about an 18.5% increase by, I'm just worried about the future. Is this the wrong time to ask that? But
Return, there you go.
Through the mayor to Councillor Davidson, it's something that we continuously do throughout the year, not something that we look at budget time. We're always looking at opportunities and initiatives for continuous improvements. As I noted in the previous BCW meeting, the outlook and forecast is a projection based on a moment in time and the information that we have at the time. So coming into this budget process, we had a forecast of 4.02. Right. So definitely, to answer your question, we will do everything over the next year until we come back again to make sure we're looking at all opportunities for savings, efficiencies, finding those additional revenues to get the budget number down.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else on the first? Actually, I haven't spoken on the first round. Is there anybody else on the first round? Okay, there's one other thing, and I guess this is a question at the moment. We have had a discussion about two different items in the community service divisions that we are now realizing that we may be able to find savings on. One had to do with summer camp registration based on some early estimates of where we're headed in that place, and also on some waste container purchases. We've got more clarity on what the cost will actually be. I guess, Commissioner, if you can you just give me some more clarity on that, and maybe there's a place there for us to do something.
Sure, through you, Mr. Chair. So our budget estimate, as you know, is a projection from the end of last year. Just two days ago, maybe 3 now, our summer camp registrations opened, and we are on track to do better than we originally forecast. Now we can see. So staff would be comfortable recommending a $50,000 increase in revenue there. And then I think the second one you were asking about is the waste container budget, and same thing happened. We recently had the proposals come in from our RFP process for that contract, and they did come in $20,000 less than our estimate, so we could reduce 20,000 there.
Okay, so there's $70,000 in savings that we could move an amendment to that would not really affect anything, because we're kind of getting a pretty good sense that those revenue targets and savings combined will translate to a $70,000 revenue and cost savings positive thing toward the budget.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Well, I can't do it because I'm the chair, but I wonder if Councillor Silovitz, could we word that? I mean, I'm not sure how we word this at this point, but Mr. Ban, I'm sure you'll come up with something.
The budget chair.
Yeah, Councillor Silovitz said she would move it. No, that's, yes, 17. Yeah.
Thank you. And I believe also, to be succinct, we should separate it again and we should record it.
Okay, is there anybody that wants to talk about the amendment before us at the moment? Councillor, Regional Local Councillor Deputy Mayor Chan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think probably is a reasonable question to ask for Mr. Chair. I can see for number 2, because nonetheless it's still estimate, but it looks like we are going to realize that $50,000 extra revenue, I gather, right? Through you, Mr. Chair, to the commissioner. Because it's still estimate I'm seeing. I just want to get a comfort.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So we haven't made that revenue yet, but we are definitely on track to make that revenue. We're comfortable with that estimate so far. We're kind of in the middle of registration right now. So we're learning this as the days go on. Okay, interesting, in the middle. So by February 22nd, which is a council next week for final adoption of this budget, we would have a little bit more certainty that $50,000 will be realized, whether may be realized through you, Mr. Chair. Through you. Yeah, as time goes on, we'll get more and more accurate estimates. So next week we would have.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, hopefully may get even more. So thank you. And on number 3, I'm wondering what would be the impact? Would that, in a sense, arguably a service level reduction, meaning less container for people to purchase from us? I just want to understand what the ramification on services. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, it's not a service level reduction. It's again, a refinement of an estimate because we have an actual now within the last little while. We've got the actual number and it is $20,000 less than our estimate. Thank you. So, okay. So it's actually something, yeah, it's no brainer as quoting, paraphrasing the mayor said earlier, another item. Thank you.
And no brainer is not really my term. I borrowed it from somebody else too, but yeah, I mean, just to be clear, these two things are things that we've asked the staff to look at, to, examine with a very close microscope. And these things basically came up in the last couple of days. So, I mean, they're not big amounts. And again, it's not going to make that much of a difference, but at the end of the day, we're looking to do the best we can here. And this is part of the process. So, all right. So we have an amendment, no other speakers on the amendment. And do we want a recorded vote on that? Oh, sorry, Regional Local Councillor DePaula, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't see you there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I will support these 2 suggested amendments because there's relatively little, actually no impact. It's a refining of the budget, and it's great. And without, as the mover of the motion, I'm not going to recommend other amendments, but it's really up to committee, and this is the time to put any suggested change that you want to make. I put the draft operating budget on the floor, but members of this committee are welcome to put. We can go to Roman numeral 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or any other changes. I just other than these 2, which I support, we're just moving tax rate implications forward. So that's why that's why I didn't move it with any other changes. And we've got two additional issues that we're discussing separately in this meeting. But if anyone wants to push forward tax rate implications or make any other suggested changes, then now's the time, and it's welcome for discussion.
Thank you so much. Well said. Okay, so we have a motion in front of us. I have a feeling this is going to be unanimous. Can we try the vote without doing a recorded vote, or do you want to just do it recorded? Okay, if it's unanimous, it's kind of recorded. All those in favor of the motion, the amendment, A and B. Okay, that carries unanimously. So thank you very much for that. All right, so are there any other amendments or discussion We're most of the way through a first round on the motion as amended. Into a second round. Is there any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, we have a motion then as amended for 4.1. If we can put that up on the screen, Mr. Clerk. If this is going to be, I don't know that we should do a recorded vote. I think we probably should on this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Voting on the main motion as amended.
Okay, hold on one second. Did you have something to say?
Yes, sorry. I want to be sure that number is right because with Mr. Chair, because we are subject to under B1, that would be an impact. So I'm wondering for B2, if we are adopting this as a recommendation of next week's council, would the grant we're offering to the seniors or tax assistance the same amount, or it be also be adjusted accordingly? Just to be clear for you, Mr. Chair.
Well, I mean, what you see in front of us is what we're voting on, unless you want to discuss it further, I think. Ms.
No,
Lee?
not discuss, just to make sure the figure is
Okay.
reflected correctly.
Mr. Ban?
If I may, thank you, Mr. Mayor. For clause B1, with the recommended budget increase 467,300 to the treasurer, I assume that number would reduce by 196,000 based on the three adjustments, as well as the total tax levy would reduce by the same amount. Would that be correct?
Through the chair, that's correct. But I think the question is about the seniors tax grant, right?
That's correct.
So the same adjustment would apply, but it's going to be very minimal.
So perhaps the wording should be to 420 to be adjusted in accordance with the final figure of B1. Because otherwise, if I were a senior sitting at home waiting, and how come later on, maybe after all the adjustment, I only get 418, not 420? That's where I'm coming from.
Okay, if I'm not mistaken, in other years, we've had this motion will go to council with any like minuscule adjustments like that need to be done, right? So it'll appear on the council agenda in its final form, subject to any other changes that we make at council. But it'll appear on the agenda in the form that we send it off today with all the accuracies.
That's correct.
Do you have a question?
Sorry, I do with my first budget and all. I'm confused between 4.1B that says that the 23 city operation budget and the last two words of F be approved. What? We're recommending to receive this budget and we're actually going to put the yay or nay next week is my understanding. Am I correct?
So this, as I said earlier, committee of the whole is when we make recommendations as this committee to a body called council, which happens to have the same people on it. Okay. So we're making recommendations to the same group, but when this comes to budget, it'll be the time where final decisions are made right now. And we need to know this because starting March 1st, we will be reestablishing regular committee of the whole. It's the same principle. Okay. It's a good question though.
Thank you.
It took me quite a while to figure that out when I was new to council too. Okay. So we have this in front of us. Is there any other questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none. So Mr. Chair, let's do a recorded vote on the motion A through F.
Thank you, Mayor West. Voting on the main motion as amended. Mayor West.
Yes.
Regional Local Councillor DePaula.
Yes.
Councillor Silovitz.
Yes.
Councillor Thompson.
Yes.
Councillor Shiu.
Yes.
Regional and Local Councillor Chan.
Yes.
Councillor Davidson.
Yes.
Councillor Tree.
Yes.
Councillor Liu.
Yes.
Main motion as amended carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you. All right, so moving on to our next agenda item, we have the municipal election campaign contribution rebate program which is 4.2. And Councillor Silovitz had expressed an interest to talk to that. So I'll start the discussion off with Councillor Silovitz. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I want to thank Mr. Doughty for stepping forward earlier on and delegating to this particular item. I appreciate everything that he said, and I agree with him. The one word that Mr. Doughty used was transactional, and I think that that is a very, very important denotation of this particular item that we need to deal with. Because the last thing we need is for something that we do here at council to become a transactional positive for those out there, but a negative that could be perceived as a negative for council and for anybody who runs in the next election. So I'm in your hands, Mr. Chair and Mr. Clerk, as to how you want me to do that. I would like this removed.
That we won't proceed with it.
That we do not proceed.
Okay, so Mr. Clerk, if you can come up with something, and
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak?
I just, if I may,
Oh,
sorry.
I'm
No, no problem. It's just this entire agenda issue item. There's just fraught with problems, and I don't believe that we as a council in this term need to be dealing with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tree.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through Mr. Chair to our maybe city staffs or our council members. So I say that there are option A and option B. There are two options, right? Either recommended or the second one is no further. Just through third questions or third options here. Can we consider outsourcing? If, for example, city of Richmond Hill need these services and the other city also need the services, can we share the cost? Like our annual services, we outsource to City of Vaughan to share the service for this position. Is there any way we can share?
Mr. Hike. Actually, sorry, before we proceed, Councillor, is this what you're looking for? Like, this is asking for it to be approved. I don't think that's what. Yeah, no, it's not. So I think Councillor, I think what you were asking for is that we just receive it and then that's it. That's all we need to do, right?
If I might, Mr. Mayor, there's actually option 2 in the staff report specifically said if council did not want to proceed with the rebate program, we still recommend, remember there was a policy we suggested in there about the surpluses. So we still do recommend, because in that applies whether a rebate program exists or not. And so option 2, which Mr. Ban has put on the screen, we wouldn't be proceeding with the rebate program, but we would still adopt the policy and do a little cleanup on that. So.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. So go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, Councillor, firstly, I would never recommend that we outsource something that is effectively a legislative responsibility that would fall to me as my legislative responsibility as the clerk under the Municipal Elections Act. That's fraught with risk. I am not even sure I have the authority to delegate legislative authority such as that to an outside party. The position, and I understand the conversation has all been about the position so far versus the rebate program. And certainly staff were very pleased to give you the true cost of administrating this program, which is the position, which included the position. That position, you know, the delegate said maybe a third of their time would be allocated to the rebate program. I'm not sure we could break it down like that. I could tell you in a 4-year cycle, that person would be in a 4-year period. You're talking 30% of their time would be allocated to all election matters, including the rebate program. I don't see how I could possibly combine with another municipality to deliver something that is completely different. So you understand that the foundation of a rebate program is the campaign financial filings that each candidate is required to submit, that I am legally required to collect, review, and process. I can't outsource how that gets dealt with to another municipality. I can't combine with a municipality. That's my independent statutory authority and responsibility. So it wouldn't serve any purpose. You'd have a rebate program, but you'd still need the body to deliver, because as we set out in that report, that body is not just about elections. There is, we struggle to retain the people that we need to run elections on a contract basis. So.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Davidson, and then Councillor Liu.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I want to say that I appreciate Mr. Doherty as well. And by not approving this does not mean that council hasn't heard and believe, or at least I can speak for myself, that we do need to make our elections more accessible, and donations is one part of it. But perhaps, as we discussed last week, we could review other things like signs and making it more affordable in general to run a campaign, and that this isn't the end of the road for making elections more affordable for anyone who wants to run in our democratic elections, but that it's one part that doesn't feel right now. And I would not support this and support Councillor Silovitz removing it altogether.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Liu.
Thank you very much. Just a very quick question. So we're saying no to the rebate program, but we're approving the allocation of election campaign surpluses. Does that impact the tax rate?
Mr. Mayor, no, absolutely, it does not. And it wouldn't, even if you did allocate it to the overall budget, you're talking maybe $1,000 to $1,200 over 4 years.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so I will say, so this was the motion that I initiated, and I really do appreciate the analysis that was done by staff, because as I suspected, I think it's actually, the idea has merit, but I just don't think that the execution of this idea is necessarily going to provide the outcome that we want. And it will be a lot of work. So it would not be an unsubstantial consequence of a lot of work. I actually, in doing the analysis, I would go so far as to say that it might actually impact in a negative way a new candidate, because if you were only going to fundraise less than the threshold to have to do an audit, you would not be able to apply to have the rebate program, and that would put a new candidate at a competitive disadvantage. And that's the exact opposite of what I was hoping to happen. I think that there are many, many, many barriers for candidates to run, and we really need to be looking at removing them. I remember a couple of years ago, the provincial government asked us what our thoughts were on some campaign reform. They made some campaign reforms, some of which I think I agreed with, but I think they left a lot of low-hanging fruit on the tree. And I think that the spending limits, frankly, are too high. And what ends up happening is, we spend far too much on signs, as Councillor Davidson had pointed out. It may be possible at some point for us to send our thoughts to the provincial government, if we have any, to do some election campaign finance reform. But in the meantime, I like Councillor Davidson's idea that maybe by changing our sign bylaw, we can effectively limit the number of signs that people can realistically put up. And if we were able to reduce that, the barriers to getting into the race for a new candidate would effectively, I think, be more advantageous than anything that this program would realistically be able to give out. So this is an idea that was mine. I thought it was a good idea. I don't think it's a good idea anymore. And that's okay. But I do appreciate the staff doing the work and on this, because I know that other municipalities do have this program, and maybe it works for them. But I'll just finish off by reiterating what I said the other day, that I have talked to a couple of my colleagues in different municipalities, and they have shared some of the same concerns that we are expressing in this staff report. And I didn't get the sense from the research that I did on that level that this is really something that's worth pursuing, at least not at this time. So I appreciate the work, and I appreciate council's comments on this. And I think we can probably move forward. So nobody else on this issue? Okay, so, oh, I'm sorry, Regional Local Councillor DePaul, I'm sorry, I keep looking side to side, never in front of me on the screen. Go ahead.
No problem at all. I just wanted to say that I support this motion, definitely. And I support the intent behind the consideration of having a rebate program. I understand the goal and the intent there, and I really appreciate Councillor Davidson's comments. And I just hope maybe when this comes to council can direct staff to formally or request staff to look into our sign bylaws and limiting signs, any way that we can limit the scope of these campaigns or the advantages that someone would have by spending or raising more money. So I think that's good, but I think it's fraught with problems and it's taken advantage of, and it's abused in some cases in other municipalities. And I think we're taking the right step here. I just want to note that this should be a 0.1% reduction in our tax rate implication, because we're talking about nearly $100,000 that was in the budget through you, Mr. Mayor, to our treasurer. Is it?
Treasurer Lee.
Through the mayor to the regional councillor, no, the budget does not factor in a dollar for this agenda item.
Okay, so it would have been 0.1% higher, for our tax rate had we gone forward with this. And
that's correct.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All right, no more comments. We have a motion before us then, 4.1, it's on the screen. Sorry, 4.2, my mistake. All those in favor? Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you. It's still unanimous. Mr. Clerk, is that correct? If there's a person not in their seat, it's still unanimous. Okay, thank you. The item 4.3 is the reinstatement of the community bulletin board in the Liberal newspaper. I'm going to go to Chair DePaulo for this, given that it was his motion originally. Chair DePaulo.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think maybe we can reach a compromise. I want to thank Mr. Bleak for his comments and the comments of many people across Richmond Hill that missed the bulletin page, or the city having a regular presence in the Liberal. I think that's what this is all about, to have a place that people can confidently go to, and they know those that aren't regularly visiting our website, and primarily it's seniors, and because that paper is delivered to 40 of 60,000 homes or whatever it is, but the full re-implementation of 200,000 is not desirable. It's not what we're hoping, or what we can afford in this budget. But there were some options given when this was referred to the budget committee, and I want to move that we reinstate the bulletin page on a bi-weekly basis. I think if we go once a month, you look at 3 Liberals, you don't see a bulletin page. You don't think we have one. But I think if every other Liberal had a one-page bulletin page, and if we consolidate some of the advertising we're already doing into that one page on a consistent basis, I think that that can help us with that communication without overly impacting on this budget. So I have a question through you, Mr. Mayor. What if any budget amount is currently in the budget for the reinstatement of the Liberal bulletin page?
Okay, I probably put that to staff. Ms. Lee.
Through the chair to Regional Local Councillor DePaulo, the budget as it stands does not reflect any dollars related to the reinstatement. So any changes would represent an increase.
Okay, so I'm having difficulty finding well, the last staff report you had on this that showed the different options. I was looking at the option that I think was $26,000 annually for biweekly half page, perhaps.
I think the amount that you're referring to is the amount that was spent in the Liberal on an annual basis, is, if I'm not mistaken.
Previously, but we were presented with some options the last time this was discussed, and we had.
Okay, hold on a sec, Councillor. City Manager,
Mr. Mayor.
Okay. City Manager Jocelyn.
Through you to Regional Local Councillor DePaulo, there was a memo that was circulated to all members of council. I believe it was yesterday, that outlined 5 options for council to select from.
Right. So I just want to make sure I'm proposing the correct option. Okay, reinstating. Here we are. Okay. If you could just bear with me for one moment. So the option that I would want to propose to put back on the floor is, yeah, the more economic option, option 3 in the memo. It's a $50,000 implication. It's a bi-weekly half page. The option, I think that's better than the monthly full page. So that would be my motion, Mr. Mayor. I truly think that our residents will get value from this. I think we've been very good with the budget, but council did vote to reinstate this. All of the other options are far more costly, and going back to what we used to do would today be $141,000. So this $50,000 option would be a compromise, and I'd like to move that we instate $50,757 for a biweekly half-page community bulletin in the Liberal newspaper.
Okay, we've got a couple of speakers. Councillor Liu, did you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Budget Chair. I don't have any problem with this motion. I just have a question. So last year we spent $58,000 approximately, and 134 English ads and 90 multilingual ads. So what happened to the multilingual ads and all the online digital display ads, radio ads, signage? Do we have extra budget for that, or this is all through Mr. Mayor?
Ms. Hood. You go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, the budget that's outlined in the staff report, that what we spent on advertising in 2022 is what specifically strategic communications ordered, placed, et cetera, for departments, divisions across the organization. And in most cases, the majority of that money is from budgets in those departments, their promotional budget. So I would fully recommend and expect that we would continue with online advertising and multilingual advertising, particularly online multilingual advertising, because it has been proven to be cost effective and effective.
So, okay, so each department has that budget for promotion.
Through you, Mr. Chair, those services that are outlined in the report are already in the base budget, so we don't need additional money for it. The Liberal bulletin page ad that you're contemplating now would be the extra budget required.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you.
Okay, any more conversation on that? Oh, sorry, Councillor Silovitz, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to Regional and Local Councillor DePaulo for bringing this forward. I fully agree. And I want to thank the delegate as well, Dr. Bleak, who spoke about this. He mentioned something very specific, and That is, this is an age-friendly act, and I believe that it is. And we are currently going through our DEI process. We are currently going through an age-friendly municipality discussions with thanks to Deputy Mayor Chan. So there's a lot of issues that we are dealing with, and I did not vote for this in the budget discussions last term. In fact, I was vehemently against it. So I am very, very pleased to see this back. And I believe it behooves us as leaders of this community of Richmond Hill to say that we do support local news. We support our local reporters. It's very, very important that the Liberal newspaper continues. And I do believe that having our bulletin back in there twice weekly, half a page, and I'm sure communications will do a splendid job in letting our residents know that. I believe that this is absolutely the right thing. I believe we're correcting something, and I believe we are adding to us being a fully fledged age-friendly society. There are residents out there who do not use a computer or find it difficult to use a computer. At least we know that this, with a bulletin being printed in the Liberal newspaper twice a month, that we have very specific issues that will be able to go out to our residents, and we know that they will be able to read it. And I believe that the bulletin is also in the online. Is it on the online? I'm not sure. I guess, well, I don't know. I would imagine when you go online, you might be able to access it. Anyway, if Libby, if you could, just look at that for a future discussion at some point, because I think it would be good to be able to have that online as well, so that people can see it. If it's possible to do within the constraints that we're hopefully going to approve. Yeah. So thank you, local and regional councillor DePaulo. I fully support this.
Okay, Councillor Tree.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, to echo the councillor's comment, I fully support this motion. I remember before COVID-19, for our labor, I almost read all the pages. To be honest, even I use a computer a lot, but I still like to read the traditional way, especially in books and newspaper. I don't like the electronic version, to be honest. And through my campaign period, and all through the past 3 years, 3 months as councillor, I met a lot of seniors in our community. Actually, a lot of them don't have computer, don't even have a smartphone. So traditional way, like newspaper, is first one is my personal preferred. The second one is really demanding from community, especially for those seniors. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Thompson.
Through you, the mayor, I'd like to thank Regional Councillor DePaula for bringing this forward. I have to admit that my preference definitely would have been that we go each week on the full page, because I feel if we're going to do this right. But if this would have been about the minimum I would have gone, and it looks like this is the appetite that people have for this. So I will be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, I'll just finish up. I thank you, Regional Local Councillor DePaulo, for doing this. I agree. I think the value that the ads create in this forum is that it gives people that do read the Liberal, and I must admit not everybody does, but those that read the Liberal, it gives them a place to find information about the things that are happening in our community, and it makes them know where to look. One of the things about Richmond Hill is there is an enormous amount of things going on. There's opportunities for them to be a part of consultations that we're having, our official plan, zoning bylaw, all the rest of the stuff, and many, many things that we're doing on a daily basis to revise our policies. I want to know that we are doing everything in our power to get the information out to everybody that can possibly participate. On the other side of the coin is the more fun part of what we do around here. And, things like Canada Day, Rib Fest, all of the things that we do that people enjoy in the summer, skating at different places, either both indoor and outdoor, and things that are happening in the theater. There's just so many things that are happening, and I just find we do a really good job and an increasingly good job over the years in leveraging all kinds of different mediums, social media, radio, not television, but radio and other types of forms of communication as well. And I know that newspapers are maybe not as uniformly read as they once were, but I do believe that there are still people that will look at them if they're inspired to do so. And part of that might be, I want to know what's going on in the community in the next couple of weeks. So I think this is it's a compromise. I don't believe that we need to spend the amount of money that we used to spend. I will say that, but I think that by investing a little bit in this form, I think it will make a difference. And I also think it will drive, or at least it has the potential to drive traffic to our website, to our social media. And that's really where the future probably is in getting the word out. But I think this is a good measure to do at this time. So anyway, thank you for the discussion, everybody. And I think we are exhausted our speakers list. So with that, I would ask everybody in favor of the motion. Opposed? Okay, we have that unanimous. So we have one more item on the agenda, and that's a member motion by Regional Local Councillor Chan, 4.4. So over to you, Deputy Mayor, Regional Local Councillor Chan.
Thank you. 4.4 item that it has been a part of the circulation, not only for members of the committee, but for the general public. And the subject is very straightforward. Public consultation. And I have heard not only from some of my colleagues, but in particular members of the public, when would we have a time to talk to you, or other than in a setting like today, to really offer their views on budget. So the principle is very straightforward. I think that my colleagues, I think we all agree, we are committed to conducting our budget process in an open, transparent way, as well that in the past, before COVID, that is, when in-person meetings, public consultation were possible. I recall I was there in the Central Library. We were there in one of the shopping malls, the corner of Yonge and 16, as well as back in 2016 that I have got then council approval to purchase an interactive tool online called Citizen Budget. As I understand it, it did increase the actual number of people responding to the budget of that year, 2016. Now, I think that with the new term of council and with COVID, it's still under control. Well, we still have COVID, but under control. I think there's a real opportunity. Perhaps it's a bit too late for this year, 2023, but I would ask my colleague to support or offer your views on this, that to renew our commitment in moving forward in 2014 and go on, if have public consultation in a robust kind of process. And I think this is opportunity for staff also to take the time now before they come back. Maybe in the summer, we often have a meeting, committee of the whole on budget in June, either before or after that. But the whole idea is that also give an opportunity, not only seeking out the feedback or input from residents. And I think there's a educational component. Some of you may have mentioned about there may be some social media exchanges on this year's budget. And I honestly think that if we proactively, as a corporation, as a council, to go out, this is what the budget looks like, this is what the process going through, these are the elements of that annual process. I use that term, annual. We don't just wake up yesterday in January 1st, oh, this is the year to do this year budget. So this is an opportunity also for people to be aware that This is a year-long process. It's an opportunity to participate, provide meaningful input. And Richmond Hill have been doing it in the past. So it's very straightforward. All this we need to say for my colleagues' consideration. I hope you support to direct staff to report back on a robust budget consultation plan for 2024 budget process, and I hope for the years to come, and including the possibility of any online budget tool. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to the same citizen budget, which I know we have to pay a license fee. But just to give you an idea, in the city of Ajax in in Ontario, the use of that citizen budget actually increased the response. I couldn't believe it. Is over 1,000-fold increase. Now, mind you, the actual number may be small to begin with, but it does have a positive impact. So to bring back before summer, access in 2023. If your indulgence, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, before voting, can I ask Mr. Clerk to read out all the whereas? You certainly have a better way of presenting it than me, but I'm just saying of the principles for openness, transparency, and now that we have an opportunity to re-engage the public in person and looking at the online availability and come back, how do we do a robust consultation process and education as well as receiving input from now on? Thank you.
Over to you, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor West. Whereas council is committed to open and transparent process in setting the annual operating budget to deliver quality programs and services to residents and businesses in the city of Richmond Hill. Whereas it has been the practice to hold public meetings for budget consultations with the community, and the city has previously conducted budget consultations in public spaces, shopping mall and library, and online surveys to reach out to residents in the past, which were not the most effective method to consult for the city's budget. Whereas the city has used Citizen Budget, an online interactive tool for residents and businesses to provide input and contribute to the budgetary process at a time and place that is convenient to them. Whereas there is an opportunity to further demonstrate council's commitment to engage the public in the annual process for setting the operating budget for the city by providing renewed public information and participation options. And whereas it has been the practice of other municipalities to provide various levels of budget consultation and promotion as part of their respective annual process for operating budgets. Now, therefore, be it resolved that staff are requested to report back on a budget consultation plan for the 2024 budget process, including the use of an online budget tool or survey before summer recess in 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. With the mayor's indulgence, I just also want to say that thank you, Treasurer Lee, because I have also consulted with her in preparation of this motion to ensure this is not quote unquote extra workload, but rather very much in line with what Treasurer Lee has in mind in helping council engaging the public. So I want to publicly thank you, Treasurer Lee.
Okay, thank you so much. Any comments? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, and thank you, Regional Councillor Chan, and also for the clarification at the end there, because I was going to actually ask that question. I was kind of wondering what the impact was in that respect. So, if I'm understanding correctly, this is a means for allowing us to be able to do this a little more efficiently, effectively, and in a cost-effective manner. Is that what I'm really hearing here? Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Davidson.
Thank you. Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Regional Councillor Chan, for this motion. And I look forward to, in that staff report, should this be approved, to being helped myself with some tools to educate the public about how this very complex process works, and you've seen me stumble here myself, and I get lots of extra tutoring. So I do look forward to including in the staff report some suggestions or tools that will simplify some of this very complex stuff for all the residents, so we can all make great decisions about how we spend their money. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no other comments, so I think this is a pretty straightforward idea. It's certainly something that, we always want to make sure that we're acting as, as participatory and as possible and get people interested. I will be the first to admit, a budget binder with a whole bunch of numbers, no disrespect, Treasurer Lee. You make it as exciting as it possibly can be. But it's not something that really inspires a lot of people to want to participate in this process, but it is important. It really is. And, we've spent a lot of time as a council talking about this, and we're not quite finished yet. And we recognize that. I think the public needs to recognize it too. The only thing I will say, and it kind of dovetails on what Councillor Davidson is saying, we have a responsibility, the 9 of us, to make sure that we get out the message in all the forms that we have too. And we've been doing that. I've seen, Facebook posts and newsletters. But if there's things that can come out of this, a way of doing things and this strategy that can dovetail with our council communications too, I think that would also be helpful. So anyway, thank you very much, Regional Local Councillor and Deputy Mayor Chan, for bringing this forward, and seeing no other comments. All those in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. All right, so we have only one more thing, and that is adjournment. So I'd like a motion, Councillor Silovitz. All those in favor? Okay, opposed? Thank you very much. And again, thank you very much, Chair DiPaolo, for your work on this, and all of our staff, Gigi Lee in particular, and all of your work, and all of the commissioners and departments that have got us this far. We're close to the finish line. Thank you.